Do you understand what's going on now? They're asking the names of all the FBI agents who were engaged in that investigation be disclosed. Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of that, no.
Well,
the day before this hearing, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, the senior Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, experienced something unusual, something he said had never happened during more than 2 decades on the committee. 2 women requested a meeting with him. One had spent 17 years with the FBI, the other 22. Their connection to the Bureau ran even deeper. Both came from families with a history of service, following fathers who had dedicated their own careers to the agency. For them, the FBI was more than a workplace. It was a legacy. During the meeting, they described developments inside the Bureau that they never believed they would witness. For generations, the FBI had operated under a guiding principle: political independence. Aside from the director, a politically appointed position, agents and staff were expected to perform their duties without partisan influence. That tradition was central to the Bureau's identity. According to the women, that culture was now under strain. The new administration had directed all agents and employees who participated in January 6-related investigations to identify themselves, a group numbering roughly 5,000 people. Durbin asked a direct question. Were they comfortable having their identities revealed publicly? Did they believe that doing so would protect those agents and their families? The concern was serious. Many individuals involved in the Capitol attack had lengthy criminal histories, and presidential pardons had allowed them to return to public life. The women feared the consequences that public identification could bring. When Durbin entered the hearing room the following day, those conversations were still fresh in his mind. He intended to question Todd Blanche, the nominee for the Justice Department's second highest position, about the future of the institution he hoped to help lead. Durbin began with a straightforward question. Had Blanche personally watched the videos from January 6th? What happened next drew immediate attention.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. Mr. Blanche, have you seen any videos of the January 6, 2021 assault on the United States Capitol building?
I've seen some videos, yes.
Have you seen any instances where the crowd that was trying to break its way into the Capitol assaulted our police officers?
Yes, I have seen some of those videos.
And have you seen indications of that one police officer they were trying to crush in that doorway? It was shown over and over again. Have you seen that?
I'm sure I have. It doesn't come to mind, but I'm sure it has. Yes.
And you saw perhaps the demonstrators crash through the window with some sort of a shield to gain entry into the U.S. Capitol?
Yes, I believe I've seen that, Senator, yes.
So as a former prosecutor, when you saw those scenes, did it cross your mind that they should be investigated?
Absolutely. Assault of law enforcement, any sort of assault by anybody of law enforcement should never be tolerated and should be investigated.
What is your opinion of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Excuse me, Senator?
What is your opinion of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
What is my opinion?
Yes.
I think the Federal Bureau of Investigation, like you said, is one of the greatest law enforcement offices in the world.
And if you're going to have a federal prosecution of the people who assaulted the Capitol, it would be understandable that you would turn to FBI agents to conduct the investigation. True?
Well, yes.
And of course, during the course of conducting the largest criminal investigation in the history of the Department of Justice, it's no surprise that some 5,000 FBI agents were called on and assigned duties to investigate those crimes.
A lot of FBI agents, is my understanding, were part of that investigation, yes.
Do you understand what's going on now? They're asking the names of all the FBI agents who were engaged in that investigation be disclosed. Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of that, no.
Well, that's a fact. And the defendants in this situation, the FBI agents, attorneys, have asked them to suppress the disclosure of that information publicly.
I've read, I suppose, the same articles and memos that you're speaking of. I don't believe that disclosure is on the table. I believe providing the names was requested by the United States Department of Justice, which the FBI is a component agency of, yes.
Why?
Well, I'm not there, Senator, but according to the memos that I've read that have now become public, it's to better understand what went wrong. Because in President Trump's view, something went wrong in that investigation.
Something went wrong in the Capitol, too, as we had to vacate the Senate chamber, as the Secret Service pulled the vice president out of his chair in front of all of us, as we were executing our constitutional responsibility to count electoral votes. The president is certainly focused on the investigation, but what about the insurrectionist mob that stormed this Capitol? I'm just wondering, in this situation, how you can justify disclosing the identities of these individuals, many of whom were given an assignment. Didn't you tell me that when you were a U.S. attorney, you didn't have the luxury of picking the cases you worked on? You were told, at least at the beginning, this is what you'll do?
That is true.
And do you believe it was any different for the FBI agents who were investigating January 6th?
Senator, the only thing I'm questioning is the word disclosure. I am not aware of an effort by the Department of Justice or anybody to disclose those names to the public. I'm not there, but from what I've read, the requirement or the ask was to provide information to the Department of Justice.
Pause here for a moment and consider what had just been established. Blanche acknowledged that he had watched the January 6 footage. He agreed that attacks on law enforcement officers should always be thoroughly investigated. He praised the FBI as one of the most respected law enforcement organizations in the world. And he agreed that assigning agents to investigate what became one of the largest criminal investigations in Justice Department history was entirely appropriate. Then, Durbin revealed something surprising. The Department of Justice, the very department Blanche had been nominated to help lead, had requested the identities of approximately 5,000 FBI agents and employees who worked on January 6-related cases. Blanche responded that he had not been aware of that request. He was unaware that such information had been sought by the department he was preparing to join. He was also unaware that FBI agents, along with their attorneys, were already fighting in court over concerns related to the disclosure of that information.
Blanche explained that he had seen the same news reports as Durbin and believed the names were being shared internally within the Justice Department rather than released publicly. But Durbin argued that distinction did little to calm concerns among agents. After all, these investigators had not volunteered for those assignments. They were directed to work those cases as part of their duties. Blanche himself recognized that reality, noting that prosecutors do not typically choose which matters they handle. They are assigned their work. The same principle applied to the thousands of FBI personnel involved in the January 6 investigations. With that point established, Durbin shifted the discussion in a new direction. His next focus was the impact of the blanket pardons and the kinds of individuals who had benefited from them. What he described next intensified the debate even further.
Are you familiar with the president's decision for a blanket pardon for those who were convicted of crimes on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol?
I am aware that President Trump pardoned everybody, yes, or commuted some sentences, yes.
Commuted all of them. Guy Reffitt, the first defendant to stand trial on charges related to January 6th Capitol insurrection, sentenced to 87 months in prison for bringing a firearm into the Capitol that day. Reffitt's 19-year-old son Jackson turned him into law enforcement after the attack. Jackson also indicated that Reffitt had threatened to shoot him and his sister Peyton if they reported him to authorities. After receiving the blanket pardon from President Trump, Reffitt attended Kash Patel's Senate Judiciary Committee nomination hearing. Here's what he posted on his social media afterwards, quote, "Present and in support of Kash Patel as the leftist commies continue to spew their lies, misinformation and disinformation. My man, clean house Kash," end of quote. Can you understand why the FBI agents would be reluctant to disclose not only their names, but perhaps the locations of their families in an effort to justify keeping their jobs if this kind of person is on the loose?
I'm not aware of that being asked of any FBI agent or their families, Senator.
So let me just lay it on the table. Are you prepared to say that if your nomination is approved by the United States Senate, you would stop any effort to disclose this information that might jeopardize the safety of FBI agents?
The safety of FBI agents is, of course, extraordinarily important. I cannot sit here today and commit to anything beyond that statement, that we will never do anything to put the lives of the family or the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in danger.
Well, meeting with the agents' representatives yesterday, I can tell you it's a very real fear on their part that this kind of political system that's being used to purify the ranks of the FBI before the new president gets into office is wrong.
I'm not there, Senator, but that is not my reading of what's happening at all. So I wasn't part of the memo drafting or the discussions as to why it was sent. But from what I've read about it, it's not a purge. It's not firing agents. It's collecting information so that what happened doesn't happen again.
And it's never happened before. And these agents who've given their lives to that agency, they ask the basic question: what if the next president is elected and disagrees with President Trump's immigration policy? Are we going to be held responsible again, disclose our names if we got involved in the immigration cases of President Trump?
Senator, I think it has happened before. I mean, the FBI is a component agency of the Department of Justice. And so to the extent that the Department of Justice is seeking information about an investigation, I agree with you, not to this extent, because there's never been an investigation as large as the one that the Department of Justice conducted about January 6th. But the idea that the Department of Justice doesn't have oversight responsibility of the FBI, and that includes agent names at times. I can't believe that in the history of the FBI, this is the first time the Department of Justice has asked for names. I can't believe that that's true.
Well, there were 5,000 agents involved in this investigation that they're now being asked to disclose if they were involved in it. I don't think there's any precedent at the FBI of that kind of effort, and the impact it's going to have on morale and the operation of that agency will not inure to the benefit of the safety of Americans.
Guy Reffitt became the first January 6 defendant to go to trial. He was ultimately sentenced to 87 months in federal prison after being convicted of bringing a firearm to the Capitol. Following the attack, it was his own 19-year-old son, Jackson, who alerted law enforcement. Prosecutors said Reffitt had threatened both Jackson and his daughter Peyton, warning them against reporting him. After receiving a presidential pardon, Reffitt appeared at Kash Patel's Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing. He later posted a message online expressing support for Patel and encouraging him to clean house within federal institutions. Durbin used that example to raise a broader concern. He asked Blanche whether he could understand why FBI agents might worry about having their identities or personal information exposed if individuals like Reffitt were no longer incarcerated. Blanche responded that he was not aware of any request seeking the disclosure of agents' names or the locations of their families. Durbin then asked a direct question. Would Blanche oppose any effort that could expose information and potentially place FBI personnel at risk? Blanche declined to make a specific commitment, saying only that the Justice Department should never take actions that would endanger agents or their loved ones. The discussion then shifted to a larger issue. The FBI employees who had met with Durbin before the hearing had posed a hypothetical question. What would happen under a future administration if a president wanted to identify agents involved in politically sensitive investigations, such as immigration enforcement actions or other controversial cases? Would those agents also be required to reveal their identities? Blanche responded that he did not believe anything similar had occurred before, and questioned whether the Justice Department had ever previously requested the names of agents involved in a major investigation. Durbin countered that the January 6 investigation was unlike anything the Bureau had handled before, involving roughly 5,000 agents and personnel. According to Durbin, requiring such a large number of employees to identify themselves could have significant consequences for morale and the agency's effectiveness. He argued that the policy risked undermining the very institution responsible for protecting public safety. Weeks after the hearing, Blanche was confirmed as Deputy Attorney General and later became Acting Attorney General. Meanwhile, the FBI employees who voiced their concerns remained at the Bureau, and the controversy surrounding the request for agent identities continued.